Hi there, my name is Henrique Sousa, and you're listening to Catholic versus Atheist.
Just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you believe, and why you believe it.
Yeah, so I'm just a regular Joe. I'm not an apologist, I'm not a counter-apologist, not a philosopher. I have a regular job in IT, and I was an evangelical Christian for at least 13 years during my adult years, and then I left the faith. And now I try to look for conversations that'll bring more knowledge to people, to myself, in regards to that matter. And that approach has changed through the years, and that's why I kind of don't like very much the Catholic versus idea. I prefer Catholic with atheist.
Before we get into the philosophy and ideas, maybe just talk a little bit about your childhood, how you were raised, if you were raised Catholic or if you were raised atheist. Just describe a little bit what it was like in the home with philosophy and religion, if you would.
I grew up in Brazil, and so I was raised nominal Catholic. And by the age of my early teens, I think, I had some disappointments in family, and that led me to question whether God existed or not. I was sort of the enraged atheist, and that lasted until I was about 18. And I started, my family started going to evangelical Protestantism, and that had some influence over the years. I converted when I was almost 19, and was led to look into philosophy, politics, ethics, the whole array of things, and that led me to my deconversion 5-6 years ago.
In your honest opinion, do you think that you ever knew God and loved God?
Do you want the Jordan Peterson style answer or
No,
my personal answer?
your answer.
Because if you take any type of series, say Star Wars or Harry Potter for the younger generation, if you know a character very well, if you know Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is a very honorable character in the Star Wars series, you can relate to him, you can have a relationship with him, you'll hear him talking to you, you'll know what he would do in such and such situation. It's sort of the what would Kenobi do? And in that sense, yes, people can have a relationship with a fictional character. They can experience that relationship. So in that sense, yes, people can have an honest relationship with God, which in my opinion is a fictional character. So yes and no. So is that a relationship with a real person? No, it's not.
Are you a real person? Do you exist?
I think that's an irrelevant question, but yes.
Well, it is relevant because either you are the source of that existence or not. There's no third option. So you are either self-existent or not.
Why would that question even matter? I am here. I have to take decisions. Tomorrow I have to go to work and I have to create a program. I work in aerospace and right now in data processing for aerospace. So I need my program to do things that are predictable. How does knowing whether I am the source of my existence or not help with that or with anything else? It doesn't.
It does help because if you're not the source of your own existence, then you need to know God, to love God, and to serve God. Otherwise, you're in deep, deep trouble. See, this is the whole point of religion, is to reconnect with your Creator.
So do you think it's more important to reconnect with the Creator for this life or for the next one?
It's more important for the next life because the next life you're going to have one of two outcomes. One of them is very pleasant and the other one is not pleasant at all, to put it mildly. So heaven and hell are the two outcomes awaiting you, and you have to choose. It's a question of your will. Do you love the self-existent being, the one necessary being, the uncaused first cause? Do you love your Creator? Yes or no? This is what it comes down to. That's why it's very important that you wake up and realize that you are not God and that God is God.
Right. So if I said I had $20 billion and if you invested $10,000 and my project, later on, I would give you at least a share, like $1 billion of that fantastic project that I'm involved in. And you say, okay, when are you going to give me that $1 billion? I say, later. Okay, I'm going to travel to Europe. When I come back, I'm going to give you that $1 billion for sure. But I don't give you a date. You call me 10 years later and say, okay, where's my $1 billion? I say, did I come back yet? I said, no, you're still in Europe. So yeah, when I go back, I'll give you the $1 billion. How long will it take for you to realize that you have been fooled?
Well, I don't trust any human. I only trust God. So I wouldn't invest in your company. But there's a categorical difference between you because you're contingent, you're radically contingent, and you're eminently fallible, whereas God is infallible and he's necessary and he's omnipotent and he's all good and deserving of all my love. You see, there's a radical difference of category. It's not a question of a difference of degree. It's a difference in kind, right? We can't compare apples and oranges in that way.
I agree. But we can't compare with this conversation because who's telling me about heaven and hell is you, it's not God. So it's exactly like me offering you $1 billion. You're offering me heaven and hell, not God.
In 5 minutes, we can come to the conclusion that you are not God and that God is God. We just need to look at contingency. We need to look at the principle of causality, and you will agree that there is a supernatural first cause that is not spatial, not temporal, and that is infinite in every perfection. It would only take 5 minutes, but you're not willing to do that.
We could have this conversation, but I'm more interested in meta conversation.
Sure.
Yeah, so if you were convinced today that your religious view is incorrect, would you lose something?
No.
Well, do you have a job related to your religious practice?
No. If I were to change my worldview, I would celebrate because I don't want to cling to a lie. I want to approach the truth. So if I realize I'm believing a lie and I embrace a fuller portion of the truth, I would celebrate.
Right. I agree that should be the case. But most of the times it's not, right? So people have jobs related to religion. They're professional apologists or they're priests or they're teachers, either in church or college or school. And they have families that are religious. I don't know what's your family's inclinations. And people can be shunned or they can have some contact being damaged by that change of religion. Sometimes even political party association can change that as well. Do you think none of that would change for you?
Nothing would change for me. Nothing would change. I would just be happy to have gotten closer, that much closer to the truth.
And none of your relationships would change because of that?
Well, my wife would be ecstatic because she's an atheist.
Oh, really?
All my entourage are atheist and agnostic. I'm the only one that converted 10 years ago.
It's interesting because think about it. Do you have this kind of conversation with your family and friends?
I want to, but no one wants to talk about religion or philosophy.
So we're in the same boat here. When I first deconverted, I had a very raging time because it's hard to realize or to at least think that you have been fooled for so long and you had committed so much to something. And for at least a couple of years, how this conversation started, like a regular debate with arguments being presented for one side and the other, and people, that was my thing. And I realized not soon enough that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So why do you think that doesn't work?
Because it's not a problem of the intellect. Conversion and faith is a problem of the will. So we are loved by God and we need to freely choose to love him back. It's a problem of the will, not a problem of the intellect, because there's a certain slavery to sin, and God wants us to be slaves to him, to his goodness and to his freedom. But we'd rather be slaves to sin because it's what we're familiar with. It's more comfortable. It's more predictable. You talked about predictability. Well, it's more predictable being a slave to sin than it is being a slave to a God that is wild and free and incomprehensible and mysterious.
What do you mean by slave to sin? Because that's one thing I don't quite understand.
Okay, so you open a bag of chips and you say, I'm just going to have one, and then you eat a second one. You say, okay, well, this is my last one. And then you have a third one and a fourth one, and then the whole bag is gone, right? It's like we cannot control our compulsions because we get these little pleasures. We have difficulty having self-control and making self-sacrifice for a higher good. This is the very definition of sin, is deliberately choosing a lower good over the highest good.
Okay, as I mentioned, I used to be an evangelical Christian, and that means having strict moral behavior. But my behavior didn't change. In fact, I am probably morally more strict now than when I was a Christian. I don't do anything that I didn't do before deconverting. So even intellectually, I have a hard time grasping what you mean by being a slave to sin. That just doesn't click.
Okay. I can give you one example. Do you remember when you were evangelical Christian, do you remember what the first commandment was?
Sure.
Okay. So you used to try to keep it. Now you don't try to keep it. So that's why you're a slave to sin, because of the first commandment. You used to strive to keep the first commandment. Now you can't be bothered.
Right. But can you will yourself to believe something or to not believe something? Because when I first suspected that God didn't exist, I wasn't looking into that. As I mentioned, I was looking into politics and ethics. And when I first suspected, I was desperately trying to find a reason to be wrong. I didn't want to not believe in God. If anything, I was looking for reasons to cling to that belief. I never chose to not believe. And then can I love something that I don't believe in?
The analogy I would use is marriage. So you're married now?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Have you ever met an attractive woman that you weren't married to in the time that you have been married?
So on record or off record?
Okay, let's talk about me rather than you. So I am married. I've been married for 24 years. I love my wife. I think she's beautiful. But I have had opportunities to have sex with other women that were attractive. Okay. So I had to say no, even though the opportunity was there, the attraction was there, the pleasure is real that I could have indulged in. Everything in my nature was saying, yes, you can go for it. But there are principles that guided me and said, look, there are consequences. If you go down this path, it will feel good. You will be able to rationalize it. And you will afterwards perhaps say that you had no choice because of your human nature and because of the way that the parts fit together so naturally and effortlessly and pleasurably. But there's a principle that overrides that instinct, that lower animal instinct. Like the animals of the field have the exact same instincts to reproduce with those that they're attracted to, right? But we have a higher nature because we are made in the image and likeness of God. We have free will and reason, and our reason is a voice to the conscience that says yes or no, this is good or this is not good. So I listen to that voice, but there are plenty of people, I can tell you, there are plenty of people that don't listen to that voice for whatever reason. And they're sucked into the snare of adultery, and their marriage and their family is ruined. Okay? This is a reality. To deny that, it would be very foolish. It is a reality. And every one of those people that said yes to this temptation and whose lives and marriages and families were ruined because of that mistake, they can all point to how natural and effortless and pleasurable the whole process of sleeping with their secretary or whatever it was, how natural that process was, right? So we can't argue based on the natural inclinations that we have. We need to rise above that using our free will and our reason. This is what makes us human.
Are you saying that not everything that we wish, that we want, is natural?
No, I'm saying everything that you are tempted by is good, right? But the definition of sin is deliberately choosing a lesser good over the highest good, and God is the highest good, and God says, don't sleep with other women. Everything that you could possibly be tempted by is necessarily good, ontologically good. It's not necessarily morally good, though. That's the difference. It's not necessarily morally good. So when you were tempted away from God, whatever tempted you away was natural and it was ontologically good, but it was not morally good. And the proof is in the pudding, because right now you feel completely justified and you think that whatever drew you away from God was good and right and holy, and that there is no God, and that we can't even know him even if we wanted to know him because he doesn't exist, right? So this is the price you're paying for your sin. but it's not too late. You can come back to God. You just need to swallow your pride, and you need to be humble and admit that you are not self-existent, and therefore you have to find this God, serve him, love him, and come back into the church.
Yeah, I'm not going to respond to anything you just said. Okay, I'm just going to forget about good and bad. When you said about things that we want, it seems that there was some difference between natural will and some sort of unnatural will that is superior.
No. I never said that your inclinations are not natural. I never said that. Your inclinations are natural. Everything you're tempted with is natural and good. Now, you could be tempted by the preternatural. You could be tempted by demons, putting images in your mind, or recalling images, better yet, images that you exposed yourself to by your own free will. You exposed yourself, for example, to pornographic images, and the demons can bring those images back up before your eyes in order to tempt you. Everything about that scene is good. The women are good, the pleasure is good, everything about it is good and natural, but it's not the highest good. The highest good is to follow God's commandments and to have self-control and moderation and temperance and all of the rest.
How do you think that kind of argument helps people get closer to knowing God?
Because it's like the image I like to use is of the Titanic. We're on a ship that everyone thinks is unsinkable, and everyone's enjoying themselves in the first class lounge, eating, drinking, and carousing. And the captain says, we've hit an iceberg and the Titanic is sinking, so please make your way to the lifeboats if you want to be saved. And you're in the first class lounge enjoying yourself, saying, look, I'm a good person, I'm enjoying myself, I've paid my way onto the Titanic, leave me alone. And I'm saying, well, excuse me, but we've hit an iceberg and the ship's going down. And you keep pointing to the pamphlet that says, well, this ship is unsinkable. So we don't see the same reality. The reality that I see is what the captain told me. The captain told me, and I believe him, that we've hit an iceberg and the Titanic is sinking. So please make your way to the lifeboats. And you're just saying, I don't believe you. And it's a life and death situation. There's a sense of urgency that I have that you find bewildering and that you find perhaps foolish or naive. But I guess we're going to find out when you die, right? This is Pascal's wager. If you're wrong, you're going to regret it. If I'm wrong, I have nothing to regret. I just won't exist.
Okay, please put a pin in Pascal's wager. Let's go back for a moment to the Titanic thing. Why do you think people are just going, yeah, you're nuts. We don't believe you.
First of all, they're drunk and they're full of rich food, and the music is hypnotizing, and the beautiful bodies that are swaying all around them on the dance floor, they're very mesmerizing, and it's enchanting, and everyone's laughing and having sophisticated conversations. And it's just not easy to believe that this unsinkable ship is sinking. It's just not easy. I'm not blaming you or anyone else. It is incredible, but for God's sake, please sober up, wake up, and let's make our way to the lifeboat, please.
But if I had heard that before, and if I had checked the hole and see there's no hole in the hole.
No, it's not possible for you to check the hull and to determine that you're not in danger. This is the whole point of my analogy, is that we really are in danger if we ignore the captain, because we are not self-existent.
Yeah, but do you think that it's something that covers their eyes, that they cannot see, or it's just that they don't want to look at it? Because it seems very uncharitable that you would just say they're just drunk and they don't reason well. Because to me, that's what it sounds like.
Well, when someone says, I have nothing to worry about, there's no way that God exists. There's no way that there could be a negative consequence for refusing to return God's love. When someone says that, that is the height of arrogance. It is insane. It doesn't correspond with reality, and it doesn't cohere as a story. Even as a fairy tale, it doesn't make any sense at any level. Atheism makes absolutely no sense. So it's not uncharitable for me to point this out to you or to anyone else, right?
Right. Okay. Now, can I take back that pin on Pascal's wager?
Sure.
Okay. So you're saying that you don't lose anything by believing in God, even if you're incorrect, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So do you remember the first commandment as stated by Jesus?
Yeah, love of God.
Love God, and so on, with all your strength, or your something else?
All your heart, all your soul, all your mind, everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, your religion costs you everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're incorrect, you have given up everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So Pascal's wager is incorrect in its first words.
No, but even the secular atheist knows that self-sacrifice is the most beautiful and worthwhile thing and the most meaningful thing. That's what love is. Love is a self-giving. No atheist that I've ever met says, oh no, I don't love because love is a self-giving, it's a self-sacrifice, it's a self-denial. Therefore, I don't love my mother because she gave her life to me, she gave her energy to me, she gave her health to me, she gave her time to me. Therefore, my mother is a fool. No, no one says that. Not even the most hardcore atheist would say that about his own mother. Everyone knows that love is self-sacrifice and that love is self-denial and that love is the highest virtue. Everyone knows that, even you.
Yeah, so I don't like the label atheist, because atheism doesn't inform me of anything. It doesn't motivate me to do anything. It just means that when someone asks, do you believe in God? I just answer no. That's all atheism is. That's why I prefer to call myself a pragmatist. And that has nothing to do with whether I know the source of my existence or not, whether I believe in the supernatural and ghosts, whether I'm a naturalist or a realist or an idealist. It has nothing to do with any other question about any other subject. So saying something about atheists doesn't add to the conversation.
Are you a theist?
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, there are logical implications for that, right? And we call this atheism because there are so many logical implications for that rejection of theism. There's so many, touching on metaphysics, touching on morality, touching on free will, touching even on science, on reason. It touches on everything that's important. It touches on love, right? We just finished talking about love. You know, the love of your mother. You as an atheist, there are logical, philosophical implications for your understanding of what your mother's love is. And it basically reduces it to an arbitrary configuration of matter energy in space-time. That's all your mother's love is. It's just another random configuration of matter energy in space-time. That's all it is. If you're an atheist. If you're not really an atheist, if you're just a confused theist who's wandered off and you're confused about metaphysics and morality and everything else, then hopefully you'll wander back. But if you are an atheist, there are many, 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 many implications, and they're all absurd. They're all absurd. Each and every one.
Did I say anything about love?
You don't have to, because if you call yourself an atheist, I know that you do not believe that love is anything more than a random configuration of matter energy in space-time. That's all it is.
Yeah, saying that I'm an atheist doesn't say anything about what I believe about love.
It does. It says everything. You do not believe that there is, first of all, a supernatural realm. You think that everything is natural. You denied this earlier. You said, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a naturalist. Well, yes, it does. You cannot believe in the supernatural if you're an atheist.
Can I not believe in ghosts?
You do not believe in ghosts. I know that you do not believe in ghosts. If you're a self-consistent atheist, you do not believe in ghosts because ghosts are supernatural.
Right. I happen to not believe in ghosts, but there are at least legends of people that label themselves atheists that believe in ghosts. There are people that believe in reincarnation that are themselves atheists. Because if there is something that's not known and it starts to be known, whatever it is, it's going to be considered natural. Right? Because supernatural, just like chance, is a label to that which we don't know.
No. Your mind is supernatural, and I'm interacting with your mind, right? We have an intimacy with the supernatural. The supernatural presupposes the natural.
Okay, so I'm a computer programmer. So when I put together code, that's just electrons and ions and metal, so on. That's not the program. The program is what arises from that process of electrons and ions changing position.
Yeah. But if you put a bunch of rocks in a room and tell them get to work making a program, they cannot make a program because they do not have free will and reason. It's the same thing if you put a bunch of apes in that same room with a bunch of computers and you tell them come up with a program. They don't have the agency that we have. They don't have the free and rational mind that we have because we're made in the image and likeness of God. I mean, you cannot deny this, but as an atheist, you are denying it, which is completely absurd. To deny that there's any difference whatsoever between a pile of rocks and a group of computer scientists is completely absurd, but that's what you have to do as an atheist. If you're a self-consistent atheist. Now, there are many hypocritical, mediocre atheists, just like there are hypocritical and mediocre Catholics. There are pro-choice Catholics. You know, you can meet these people. They're very confused. There are vegetarians who eat meat. They're confused. They don't know where they stand, right? And you can meet atheists that think that there is such a thing as reason and free will. You can meet these people, but they're just very confused. They don't adhere strictly to their own worldview. They're borrowing from Christianity, right? They want free will. They want reason. They want science. So they borrow it from Christianity because atheism cannot have free will or reason or science or love or anything else that's meaningful. It's philosophically incompatible with atheism. So they have to borrow it from the one true worldview, the one true reality, which is Christianity.
Yeah, so do you understand that when you ask, is there a God? Or do you believe that there is a God? And I say no, that I am affirming that there is no God.
Yeah, you're affirming it. The analogy that I like to use is with a powerful king. There's some people that are agnostic about this king being king, and there's some people that outright deny and explicitly deny that he's king. So in other words, some people say no. Those are like the hardcore atheists. And then there are the more agnostic people that say, I don't know. But neither one is willing to bend the knee when he walks by. So the faithful people, those who are faithful to the king and who know and love the king, they bend their knee and they're not hauled off to the dungeon. But those who say, no, you're not the king, so I'm not going to bend my knee, and those who say, I don't know if you're king, so I'm not going to bend my knee, they have the same fate awaiting them in the dungeon. And it's just as miserable for both of them. So it doesn't really matter if you're a hardcore agnostic or a hardcore atheist. The outcome is exactly the same.
If there is a king.
Well, you'll find out when he passes by. If you refuse to bend your knee, you'll find out if he's the king or not, right? And it won't matter. All your sophisticated argumentation won't matter one little bit. You didn't believe. You didn't say yes. You didn't bend your knee. So you're in the dungeon either way. There are very, very severe consequences to not believing.
Yeah, so when should I bend the knee? Or in other words, when should I be convinced of something? Because say, okay, there is a tax collector, comes by, says, okay, there is a new king in town, and now you have to pay taxes to him. And I just say, okay, here is 20 shekels. Next day comes by another tax collector. Look, that king is dead. Now the king of this other country came by and, killed him, and now he's the king, and I'm here to collect taxes again. And gave him 20 shekels. When do you stop giving shekels to every tax collector that passes by?
Well, I don't worship everyone that claims to be God. There are many people who claim to be God, but I know who and what God is. By the light of natural reason without recourse to divine revelation, I can understand that I am contingent. I might not have been. My essence is not existence. And therefore, there is another. There is one and exactly one and only one whose essence is existence and who is infinite in every perfection. And I can come to know him without interacting with any slimy salespeople that are trying to convince me that Joe or Bob or Doug is God. And it's easy because I know who and what God is by the light of natural reason without recourse to divine revelation or to a team of shysters who are trying to sell me a bill of goods. Do you understand? And you have access to this knowledge of God. But for whatever reason, you are unwilling to know this God.
All right. Why do you think that would be unimpressive to someone that doesn't share your beliefs?
Well, because it's very simple. If you're on a Titanic that's not sinking, you have nothing to worry about. Just go about your business, eating, drinking, and being merry. You have absolutely nothing to worry about. So why do you spend so much time obsessing about God and religion? Right? Doesn't make any sense. You know that it's real. You know that it's true. You know that hell is real and that you might go there. You know that. Otherwise, you wouldn't spend all your time thinking and talking about God and religion.
But a penny on Pascal's wager again. Let's take care of that second part later. But I want to go back to that argument you presented earlier. You say that you can come to know God without any human telling you about God, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't actually correspond to how you actually came to be convinced that God exists. You mentioned that you used to be an atheist, right?
I was atheist for 25 years, yeah.
And you pinned the identity of God to Jehovah, to that specific Christian God, through the teachings of someone, right? Through religious texts, through preachers. You didn't write the Bible yourself, did you?
No, but I came to the God of monotheism. I didn't immediately jump on Christianity. I was a generic monotheist. I believed in the God of classical theism. I came to God through philosophy. Not only was I not attracted to Christianity, I was anti-Christian. I was a Satanist when I was an atheist. I was an atheistic Satanist. I was very, very anti-Catholic, anti-Christian. So when I found out that classical theism is true, I did not believe in the Trinity. I did not believe in the incarnation or Jesus Christ. And I also did not believe in Muhammad or the Quran or the Bible or the Torah or anything else. I just worshipped God the Father, right? And it's only through education that I came to understand that Christianity is the one true form of religion.
I understand that. But when you have these sorts of conversation that you might be trying to convince someone or to walk together towards the conclusion that you have reached, when you say something like, I have reached my conclusions without resource to human influence, that's not true on its face, because we are surrounded by all sorts of ideas. And it's very rare that we come to an idea of our own by ourselves.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that I am an island and that I've never been influenced by another human being. What I'm saying is, I don't look at a bunch of candidates that are trying to sell me a phony God and pick my favorite. We can know with certainty, by the light of natural reason, that the first cause is the God of classical theism, that monotheism is true. We can know that. And then you can, if you want, you can sincerely set yourself to the goal of understanding which of the three monotheistic religions might be true, and if any of them is true. And I am firmly convinced that Christianity is true and that Catholicism is the fullness of the Christian religion. Now, can I convey this to you in a convincing manner to the point where you will become a monotheist and then a Christian and then a Catholic within a 1.5 hour conversation? Probably not, like you said. But that's not the point of the podcast. The point of the podcast is to share my perspective, to hear your perspective, to meet people, to entertain the audience. But underneath that facade of entertainment is a very real instrumentality of grace. My podcast is bringing infinite grace to hundreds of people every day till the end of time. So that's the main point of the podcast. I just want to make that clear to you and to all my listeners.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I see any common goal with you here. And that's my main concern. What are our common goals?
What, do you like life?
Yes, absolutely.
You value life. Okay, that's the principle. The first principle is life. I'm pro-life. I want you to live not just 100 years of animal pleasure on earth. I want you to have eternal life. So that's the common goal. You like life. If you could prolong your life, you would.
Not necessarily.
Yes, you would. And if you want to say, well, I don't like suffering and pain, I'm not talking about suffering and pain. I'm talking about life. Life is good. Life is not pain. Life is not suffering. Life is not confusion. Life is not sickness. Life is not death. Life is good. So you do want life. And if you could have more life, you would have more life. You want life, and you want health, and you want beauty, you want goodness, you want love, you want all the good things that I want. That's the common ground. Everyone shares that.
I do think that life in general is good, but I know that there will come a point in life that my enjoyment of life is going to be diminished.
I know, I just said that, but those are parasites on life. Disease is a parasite on life. Dementia is a parasite on life. Everything that is evil is a parasite on life. It's a privation of goodness. So, this whole discussion of aging and illness and sickness and confusion and death, that's all because of sin, original and actual sin. But life itself is good, health itself is good, and all of these infinite perfections lie in one in the same direction and one in the same source, and we call that God. So you do want all of the good things. You're just confused about how to get it, right? You think that you can get pleasure and you can get health and beauty from some sort of materialistic man-made world in which God is absent.
That's false.
Yeah, I know it's false. I know it's false.
No, what is false is that your assumption of my motivation is false.
Okay, do you think you can have happiness without God? Yes or no?
Yeah, I hope I can,
Yeah,
because
so that's all I'm saying. You think that you can have happiness without God. You think you can have life without God, but it's not true. It's a lie.
look, I am alive whether God exists or not. I have life, and I can achieve happiness. Okay? And there will be a time when this life is going to end. And I have a limited time here. I have a limited effort here. And right now, I don't know that eternal life really exists. And it seems that even if it does exist, no one is going there. It's impossible. So look, I'm not going to give you that $10,000 until you come back with more convincing justification that you actually have the 20 billion, that actually there is eternal life, that there is something supernatural, that there is some sort of God.
You just need to look in the mirror and you'll have all the answers you need. Either you're self-existent or you're not. And if you're not, then you know that another being is, and that being is one and only one. Because there cannot be two gods, right? There cannot be two beings who are infinite in every perfection, because one of those candidates will either lack something that the other has, in which case that one lacking is not God, or the two candidates are identical in all their infinite perfections, and therefore there are not actually two, but one, right? So there is only one God, and if you're not that God, then God is God. It's that simple. And any number of salesmen telling me that I've won a fortune in Nigeria or whatever, I don't buy any of that because I don't trust human beings. I only trust God. And the God that I believe in can be known through the light of natural reason without recourse to a dusty old book or to a bunch of men in robes. I don't need people to explain to me who God is. I can use my natural reason to figure out who God is. All I need is a mirror. Look in the mirror. Am I God? Yes or no? If I'm not God, then God is God. It's that simple.
Right. I'm more interested in the things of the here and now and of how people change their minds rather than what is the correct conclusion. Because we disagree on the conclusions, but if we agree on the methods, maybe we can move forward with the things that we actually share, right? We share a space on the here and now. But it's hard to get to that point of meta conversation. We get so distracted by the arguments and figuring out what's correct or not and who's right. And sometimes we forget that it's the people that matter the most, because we have to figure out that common path, that finding out the common good.
Yeah, I mean, I love you, I respect you, and I respect your freedom, and I appreciate your approach. It's not that I'm stupid, it's just I made a choice to drill home that sort of get into the safety of the church while you still have time message. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. And if you believe I'm going to suffer if I continue the path I'm going, you do nothing, it probably means you don't care. And that hidden message in people that used to be my friends and my family, having the impression that they don't care is concerning. So yeah, I understand what you mean. And I don't find that wrong or offensive at all. I think that's exactly what you should do.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you might have a relative that's very religious, then that you think they don't care about you, but they really, really do. They don't rub your nose in it the way I was trying to, but they care more than I do. Do you understand? So it's not because you don't see them preaching to you that they're not begging God for your eternal salvation every day. So try not to judge your religious relatives if they seem cold and indifferent. I don't think they are. God only knows. Obviously, God only knows. But to the extent that they are religious, I think they must care.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of my interview, I do ask the guest to end the show, to finish the show off with a nice little positive message of hope. So just to wrap up the show, what do you think you might be able to say as a final thought?
Yeah, okay. So we should be able to figure out how to move forward to rise above religion, if you forgive my arrogance or perceived arrogance, and find out how we can reach our common goals and better our lives, at least for now, because we're all interested in that, as I mentioned just a moment ago. And if we can agree on how to do that, then I think we can, then we'll be a lot better off.
If you like your worldview, if you think it's swell, if you got some questions, ask me and I'll tell. All you got to do is ask. All you got to do is ask.